All right, guys. This is the Voice of Motown podcast. I'm Tyler Pepe.
I'm Brandon Cork, and we are joined with a special guest today, the Golden Blue Dude.
All
What's going
right,
on, guys?
yeah. Welcome, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, man, anytime somebody wants to get me in front of camera, I'm not going to turn it down.
I love it. All right, guys. So before we really jump into it, we just want to thank everyone who's listening. Please follow, subscribe, and feel free to let us know what you think about this episode on social media. Just look for the Voice of Motown podcast and definitely look for Gold and Blue Dude as well on all social media accounts. So yeah, let's just jump into it. You can find Golden Blue Dude on YouTube. He puts out a lot of good content. And obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about WVU sports today. But before we do all of that, we want to get to know a little more about you, Golden Blue Dude. So let's just jump right into it. When did you become a Mountaineer fan? Are you from West Virginia?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was actually born in the Women's and Children's Hospital in Charleston, right there. So I was born a West Virginia fan. But I remember the first year, and it's very coincidental. The very first year that I actually rooted for West Virginia because I knew what football was, I knew what a brand was, I knew what I was watching. 1988. So the very first year that I knew that I was a West Virginia fan was the year that we went to the national championship. So that was pretty awesome.
That's a great year, and that's the year Tyler and I were both born in too. So
Yeah,
we like to think that they went to that national championship game just because we were put on this earth. Joking, of course.
never know, never know.
What
Got me hooked instantly though. 88, I was hooked.
Oh yeah, that's a great year. I mean, Major Harris, Bo Orlando. You really can't pass up that team. Some great names, man. Major Harris too. I always say he was a guy who was too early for the league because I think you put
Yes.
him in the NFL now. He's Lamar Jackson, maybe even a better version of Lamar Jackson.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is the game has evolved. I'm talking about the NFL to where coaches now actually know how to block for guys like that. Back then, he wasn't used to his full potential in the NFL because they didn't know the right blocking schemes for a guy that's he can throw it and he can pass it. How do we block for him? He's all over the place. Now, they know the schemes, the blocking patterns, all the stuff they need to do. So if you were to drop Major Harris in today's NFL, he would be just fine.
Absolutely, I think so too, and it'd be exciting to watch. So when did you start creating content on YouTube? Was it always WV Sports related?
You know what? Yes, it was. I started actually creating August 2019. The way that happened is I've always been a college football nerd, a nut, whatever you want to call it. And whenever I have a conversation, it eventually leads to college football. I don't know how, it just does. So my family's like, look, we love you, man. We love you, but you need an outlet for this. And so my brother got me to watch YouTube, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with a YouTuber named Uncle Lou. He's a crazy Georgia fan. Okay, me and him are friends now. But whenever I saw him, I was like, I can do that. I can like I'm not I don't have to be ESPN and just know every stat in the book and be robotic or whatever. I can be me, have a personality, and not have to know everything. I can do that. So it was my brother that actually talked me into that because whenever you're not used to the camera, that first video is you got to get courage to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. So you get in, and you mess up and you stammer and stutter, and the editing is a nightmare. But eventually, you get to it. So people ask me all the time, what software do I need? What camera do I need? What editing? I'm like, look, all you need is your phone. And my best advice to you is go and do it. Go make your mistakes and go learn from your mistakes because you're not going to start perfect. You're not going to start the way you want to start. You will make mistakes and then learn from it. That's it.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, we ran into that too when we first started doing our podcast. I know, I primarily do our audio editing, and man, those first 4 or 5 podcasts, I felt like I was spending 4 or 5 hours a night just editing down the audio. We would have issues with the software we were using with, our recordings being cutting out in the middle of the podcast and going through and trying to fix all those little mistakes. But like you said, you come out better from it. I love that advice, working through it. That's a great way to go through life.
Don't be scared to make mistakes is the bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%, man. We've been doing this less than a year, and it sounds like we kind of have a similar origin story where we were just listening to other people talk about WVU sports, and one day me and Brandon just said, we could do this. This is what we do in our free time anyways. Why don't we just try this out? And I don't know, it's just fun, and we just kept doing it. And you're right, like, at first you are going to make a lot of mistakes, but it's just like anything. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you'll get.
That's exactly right. 100%.
So now that we know a little bit about you, let's start talking about some WVU sports. What are your thoughts on the upcoming football season? Is West Virginia going to have a solid year? What are your thoughts?
I think West Virginia is going to have a surprisingly solid year because, last year, West Virginia fans, including myself, we had pretty high expectations for what we had. We didn't realize what we had. And what we had was a really good defense, but an offense that was all over the place. I've watched a lot of interviews with Graham Harrell, with Neal Brown, with the players of West Virginia. Basically, the difference between last year and this year is last year, they went out on the field as an offense and hoped they didn't mess up. This year, they're going out as the offense knowing they're going to score. That's the different mentality from last year to this year. So, our expectations were a little too high for what we had last year, and our defense was still solid. If you go look at all the games that we played last year, we were in games that we should not have been in because of that defense. We averaged 25 points per game. We still ended up in a bowl. That's a freaking miracle. I don't care who you are. If you're averaging 25 points a game, that's a miracle. Graham Harrell, everywhere he's been, that first year he's at his new school, that school jumps 8 to 10 points per game.
Wow.
So what we're probably going to be looking at is an offense that's going to average somewhere between 33 and 35 points per game. If you take that statistic right there and you slide it side by side with last year's score, we go 12-1. That's how big of a difference Graham Harrell is going to make.
That's incredible. I didn't realize it was that close. I love Graham Harrell's approach to it too, compared to the way Neal Brown spoke about the offense last year, where, Graham Harrell talks about he wants to keep it simple. He wants to keep it fun. He wants to score points where, like you said, Neal Brown, they didn't want to make mistakes. But, the one thing about Neal Brown's offense too that I always complained about is that it seemed like they were trying to combine like 4 different philosophies of offense into some weird amalgamation around the offense. And it just didn't work out because, there'd be games where we gave Luddy Brown the ball 30 times. There'd be times where Deggy threw the ball 35 times. There'd be times where we didn't throw a single screen the entire game. And it just didn't make any sense. And you can't run an offense like that anymore.
Yeah, you have to be more consistent in your play calling if you want your offense to be successful, because a lot of people don't realize this. One of the things about offense, if you're going to be successful, is they have to get it in rhythm. They have to know the play inside and out. They have to know where exactly that foot needs to cut. They know exactly where that ball needs to come out of their arm. And whenever you're inconsistent in your play calling, that's going to throw off mechanics. That's going to throw off route running. That's going to throw off blocking schemes. It throws off everything. So that's why Graham Harrell is such an enormous hire, not just because he calls an offense that scores a lot. He calls plays that he ingrains into these players' minds that they could run in their sleep. Hey, when he calls that play, I know exactly where I'm going to be whenever the ball hits me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It seemed like, we didn't really have an identity these past few years. Like, obviously we were an RPO offense, but I agree with everything you guys said. It just, it seemed like we were lacking that identity on offense. And I do think Graham Harrell's going to have a huge impact because, just like you guys are saying, now we kind of know what to expect from our offensive game plan. But what impact do you think JT Daniels will have on this team?
Oh, he's going to have a tremendous impact. Make no mistake about it, this is still a quarterback battle, but we're all thinking that he's going to win that because, his level of skill is just above everybody else's. I liked what I saw with Will Crowder in the spring game. But, compared to what I've seen JT Daniels do, it's not quite there yet. So I agree. I think JT Daniels will win the starting quarterback. What does he bring? He brings experience. He brings composure. He brings preciseness. He knows where to put that ball. It's not a guess. It's not a hope. It's the ball needs to be right there. Hey, you either be there or it's going to fall incomplete or somebody's going to intercept it. But that's where I'm throwing it because that's where you're supposed to be. So the leadership of JT Daniels is what West Virginia has missed the most on offense. We have not had a leader on offense. So, just the sheer fact of his leadership is going to take our offense to the next level. And a lot of people are worried about, we lost Letty Brown, we lost Winston Wright, Jarrett Deggy. Well, Jarrett Deggy, you basically ran out of town. So any West Virginia fan that complains about that, then I don't know what you're doing because you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Now, for Letty Brown, West Virginia actually maximized him because once he went to the NFL and tested for the combine, he was actually the slowest running back that tested for the combine. And he still got over 1,000 yards 2 years in a row. So whatever we did with him, it worked a lot, probably more than what it should. So will he be missed? Yes, but Lynn J. Dixon is way faster, and I'm talking way faster than Letty Brown. So we have the experience of Tony Mathis, the speed of Lynn J. Dixon. 2018 averaged 8.8 yards a game. 2019, 6.1 yards a game. Wasn't used all that much last year because of some locker room issues. But the potential with Lynn J. Dixon, and he says it to the coach, every time you give me the ball, I have the potential to take it to the house. He believes he's going to take it to the house. So our running game is going to take a step up, even though we lost Letty Brown. Winston Wright, everybody likes to say, leading wide receiver of West Virginia. Yeah, but he still only had 688 receiving yards. So that's not really, saying all that much. And you had like 4 or 5 other guys that had over 600 yards receiving. So what ended up happening is addition through subtraction. Now we have fewer wide receivers. It's less crowded. They're going to get their reps. They're going to get in sync. And I think our offense is going to score a lot more points because the offense, the people that run the offense are just going to be happier this year.
Yeah, I love the running back room now. I love Letty and I loved having a workhorse, but I think there's value too in spreading out the love a little bit. And you mentioned Lynn J. Dixon, you mentioned Tony Mathis, but Jalen Anderson and Justin Williams are also really solid backs too. They were both 4 stars coming out of high school, and by all accounts during camp, they showed out pretty well too. I can definitely see a situation where you have Mathis being like the primary running guy, you have Dixon getting some passing work and maybe handling a lot of that. And then you have Anderson and Williams kind of acting as the primary spellbacks. And then you just, play people to their strengths. I mean, it's like what the Golden State Warriors do. Before Andrew Wiggins did what he did in the finals the other day, Yep. He was playing for the Timberwolves and everyone said he was a bust, but you put him in the Warriors, you minimize his weaknesses, you play to his strengths, and he looks like a superstar. I think that's what Graham Harrell's offense is built to do. And I'm really excited to see how all these running backs play this year.
I'm interested to see if those backup running backs are going to be okay with their blocking role, because you got to realize when you have that many running backs, they're not going to get, they're not going to get the ball every stinking snap. It's got to be spread around a little bit. So if they can show that they're going to put maximum effort, not just when they run, but also when they block, then that's another step that this offense is going to take.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Blocking is definitely the hardest thing, I think, for a college player to learn, because in high school, you're getting the ball 30 times a game and that's it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys mentioned how, Winston Wright's no longer here, but I think this is a big opportunity for Bryce Ford Wheaton to really have a huge year. And, of course, Prather, is the guy everyone's talking about who's going to be the X factor. And me and Brandon have talked about him a lot. We're expecting big things from him. So how do you feel about Prather coming into this year?
Oh, I was high on him from last year. I think the dude has I mean, I don't want to directly compare him to Randy Moss, but the way he high points the ball, the thing with JT Daniels is he's good with precise passes, but with Caden Prather, you don't necessarily have to be that precise. as long as you give him a chance in a 50-50 situation, he will go up and get the ball. His vertical is ridiculous. His hands are ridiculous. His weakest aspect is his route running, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's really, really good. It's just his weakest aspect. So that tells you how great of a player is when their weakest aspect is actually pretty stinking good.
Yeah, I love Prather. I mean, last year I thought he was a guy, probably prematurely, but just based on his recruiting ranking and his tape, should have played a lot more earlier on in the season. But at the end of the season, it kind of vindicated my thoughts where he was just having great game after great game. There were some drives where it felt like he was the entire offense moving down the field. I'm also encouraged by what we saw from Bryce Ford Wheaton in the spring game. And even though I know it's just the spring game, the biggest thing that I thought Ford Wheaton struggled with last year was making those 50-50 catches. And in the spring game, it felt like that's all he did. So I'm really, really encouraged by what he showed. And I'm really hoping that turns out on Saturdays coming forward this season.
Absolutely. And it helps that all 5 of our starting offensive linemen are back too. I'm excited about that. And Doug Nestor doesn't have that cast on his hand. And they're saying he's been a beast this spring and summer.
That's great. Yeah, that's one thing that, I'm really hoping improves, because the offensive line was definitely part of the issue last year, and we are returning all 5 guys. But I think Milam played great closing out the season last year. And obviously Frazier's a stud, and Nestor, obviously is really good. I think the 2 question marks for me are Gamitter, who had his ups and downs last year, and Yates, who wasn't very good at left tackle. I'm curious to see how he does at right tackle. So other than the 3 kind of studs from West Virginia, nonetheless, how do you feel about the other 2 spots on the line?
I'm actually very, very comfortable with it. Last year, I kind of rewound in my head. After the bye week, the offensive line actually got progressively better. It just got better and better and better. So as far as Mentor and Uter, I think they're fine as long as everybody is on the same page. Like you said, we have 3 studs in Nestor, Milam, and Frazier, and then the other 2 guys, they're not that far behind. So I think it'll be a team effort. So if they're having a bad game, the studs are going to be like, "Hey man, you need to step it up. We need your help, man. You dropped the ball on that one." So I think the leadership is there and the camaraderie is there. I mean, all 5 starters are back. Not a lot of teams can say that.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for continuity when it comes to an offensive line. I mean, I would say without a doubt that's the biggest part of your football team, that you need continuity. So the fact that we have all 5 back is encouraging. And, although they did improve at some parts last year, they were just really bad. So the way I look at it is there's no way they aren't going to be better, because,
Right.
They weren't that good last year, so they have to improve, you would think. With that being said, the Mountaineers have been around 500 these past 3 years under Neal Brown, and it feels like they're right there. It feels like they're ready to take that huge leap forward. So, I mean, you've mentioned Graham Harrell. You mentioned how JT Daniels is going to be a huge improvement at the quarterback position. But what else does West Virginia need to do to take that step forward?
Basically, we have to learn how to win those 50-50 football games. If you look at last year, 4 of our 6 losses were 50-50 games. You flip 2 of those, that's 8-4. You flip all 4 of those, that's 10-2. Really, there were only 2 games that we had no shot of winning. That was Baylor and Oklahoma State. That was it. The other games, we either should have won or could have won. But the old saying, coulda, woulda, shoulda, doesn't do anything. So they have to get in that winning mentality. We were 1 touchdown away. We were 1 bad snap away. We were 1, drive-stopping series away whenever it came to Texas Tech. They drove the field with a game-winning field goal. And, we came out flat in that game, battled back, and then we let them, kick the game-winning field goal. So it's just that extra step. I like what I heard from Brent Venables, the new coach at Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, they're really, really good. They've gotten to the playoffs, double-digit win season, but not national championships. So his philosophy is, a little more efficiency, a little bit work, a little bit more money. Yes, it takes money to run college football, a little bit more effort. It just takes a little more. So that's what West Virginia has to do. We have to put out just a little bit more effort, just a little bit more efficiency, continuity. We're doing things right. We're just not doing enough of it. So in order to take the next step, we have to do more of what we've been doing. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck in these 50-50 football games and not be able to win them.
Do you feel like Neal Brown handing off the offensive reins kind of will help him with those management, either it's motivation or strategic initiatives during the game to help win those 50-50 games?
Yes, because that's the one knock that I would have on Neal Brown. We saw from year one that he was not the guy to call plays for the offense, but he wanted to do it in 2020. It still wasn't working out, so he hands it off to Jared Parker, and Jared Parker was very much underqualified. We should have looked for a qualified offensive coordinator in year one, and it didn't happen. So that would be my only knock was, why didn't we do this sooner? This was a great move. It was exactly what we needed to do. Why didn't we do it sooner? So, the fact that he finally did it, great. He didn't wait till it was too late. Great. But now it's time to, now it's do or die. You waited until it's do or die time. You have no time to rebound. We have to have a good season if you want to keep your job. So hopefully from now on, he learns when a decision needs to be made, make it. Don't wait until your back's up against the wall. That's the worst time to wait till. And then if it doesn't work out, you're gone.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like you were just talking about those 50-50 games. I mean, if you look back at a lot of those games, even the Texas Tech game, the reason they lost is because they couldn't get 4 consistent quarters from their offense. They were getting like maybe 2 quarters a game of a good offense. And so they were always playing catch up or blowing big leads in the second half. And you nailed it, man. Yeah, with Graham Harrell there, with JT Daniels, and hopefully Neal Brown taking a step back and delegating a little more, like a lot of head coaches do. I think that'll be huge for winning those 50-50 games, because I think you'll get a more consistent output from your offense over 4 quarters.
Here's the bottom line, guys. This is it, the bottom line. We have to go 8-4, or I really think Neal Brown has to go. We've gotten to that point. Now, my mindset is I think we will go at least 8-4. I think we can go 9-3. I think we can go 10-2. As long as we show up in that first game in the backyard brawl, and of course we will. We're West Virginia. We travel well to Pitt. We're going to beat them by double digits. Heard it from me first. We're going to beat Pitt by double digits because of what happened in the offseason. I actually did a video on that earlier today. Exactly what West Virginia needed to happen happened, and exactly what Pitt didn't need to happen happened. They lost their offensive coordinator. They lost one of their best quarterbacks they've ever had. They lost the best wide receiver in the nation. What happened to West Virginia? We gained one of the best offensive coordinators. We gained one of the best quarterbacks in the free market. We gained a stud at running back. So Pitt lost a lot. We gained a lot. If you would have asked me probably 8 months ago, my confidence level on this, I would be like, I hope we win. I don't think we will, but I hope we do. Now my confidence level is not only are we going to win, we're going to beat them by a couple of touchdowns.
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, I think, my cutoff for Neal Brown this year is 7 wins, but there is a world where I can see that, by some, miracle. I don't want to say miracle because that's a little dramatic, but miracle. We could potentially win the Big 12, because I think if you're going to win the Big 12, this is the year to do it. Venables, it's his first year. Everyone else is having a down year. Really, the only team you have to beat is Baylor. Oklahoma State, they lost their entire defense. Who's
and
left?
Defensive coordinator.
Exactly. Yeah. In Texas, I mean, they have Quinn Ewers, but how many years in a row have they disappointed? I can't see this being any different.
Texas is a train wreck. They don't know how to make good decisions. They recruit, at an elite level. If West Virginia had the recruits that Texas had, we would be at least in the Big 12 championship year after year after year. So I don't know what they're doing over there. Firing Tom Herman for, at best, a lateral move for Steve Sarkisian, who proved nothing before he got that job, and now he's gone 5-7. Oh no, Steve Sarkisian, we're not backing off of him. He's the guy. He's been around NFL scouts. He's been around Nick Saban. What are you thinking? Okay, so he's been around some good names. It's not translated onto the field, so they're digging themselves into a hole even more. I do think that's a tricky road trip for West Virginia, though. That's actually one of the games I think we could lose in my 10-2 scenario because that's a back-to-back road game. We will be coming off an emotional win against Virginia Tech. I'm calling it. We're beating Virginia Tech on the road. But that's going to be very draining emotionally, and we got to stay out on the road. And unfortunately, I do think Texas catches us.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard fought.
I could definitely see that. I mean, looking at the schedule, I would be very happy with 8 wins. I think it's, very doable. I don't think that's, overachieving. But I could see us only seeing 7 wins as well. It just matters if we win those 50-50 games like we were talking about. And I'm with Brandon. Like, I can live with 7 wins. That would be a disappointing season, but I would give Neal Brown probably another year if we only win 7. But I would be very happy with 8. I think if we overachieve, we could get to that 9-10 win column. But since we were already talking about it, who do you think wins the Big 12? Like, who's on your short list if you only could pick 2 or 3 teams to even have the chance of winning the Big 12?
Oklahoma, Baylor, West Virginia, Kansas State. That's my short list right there. I think Baylor, the quarterback that led them to the Big 12 championship last year got beat out and had to transfer. That's how good the quarterback they have now is. And their schedule sets up, fairly nicely. I do have West Virginia beating Baylor in Morgantown.
Wow.
Baylor's never won in Morgantown, and West Virginia got a whole lot better in the offseason. So I do expect us to beat them. But that might be their only loss in the entire season. So I expect Baylor to be in the Big 12 championship. Oklahoma has the talent. Brent Venables will have the defense. It's just, can Dylan Gabriel deliver? Then there's West Virginia. We've had the defense for the past 3 years. Now we're going to have the offense. Can we capitalize on those 50-50 football games? And then there's sleeping Kansas State. Kansas State is a very underrated team. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me at all if Kansas State ended up in the Big 12 championship. I think Oklahoma State takes a massive step backwards because they lost their defensive coordinator and they lost a lot of studs on that defense. So I have Oklahoma State finishing around 5 or 6.
Wow. Yeah, you're actually the second. We had a Big Game Boomer on a couple weeks ago, and he predicted Kansas State as a dark horse too. So that worries me a little bit because Kansas State always seems to give us a headache during the regular season.
This year, though, that's a win.
Yeah, I'm hoping. As long as that 5'6" running back doesn't shred us again. I'll be okay.
Yeah. But even if you look at that game last year, I know they won 34-17, but last 5 minutes we still had a chance to tie it up, and we popped it up again.
100%. And we did skip over the defense a little bit. And you mentioned, the defense, but we also had a whole bunch of key departures, especially in the secondary. So, what do you think about the new guys and the new faces that we've seen and are stepping in those safeties and cornerback roles?
Honestly, I don't think those departures are as key as people think. Now, Hakeem Mesidor, very key. That hurt us. But Darryl Porter Jr., Nick Troy Fortune, a lot of people made a big deal out of him because at one point or another, they did start for West Virginia last year. But Nick Troy, after he got injured, straight up got beat by Charlie Wood, never earned his job back. That's why he transferred to UTSA. So Charlie Wood basically proved that he's better. So not worried about losing Nick Troy, although it did hurt us on depth. Darryl Porter Jr., gambler. On his good games, he was on point. On his bad games, he was all over the place. Not consistent enough for what we need on defense. So I like what we have at quarterback as far as Charlie Woods. And, we have Mumu bin Wanahad. People are not talking about him enough. Jacoby Spells kind of gets all the talk as far as the recruiting class. But Mumu is one of the best cover corners that came out of high school in 2021. One of the best. His recovery speed is ridiculous. Does he get beat from time to time? Yes, he does. But his recovery speed is amazing enough to where sometimes that don't matter. And look for those two to possibly be used in the return game as well. I'd keep my eyes on that. I like our linebacker situation. Austin Cave was a nice addition. We needed some depth as a linebacker. I think Dixon is going to be amazing. Again, I think he takes that step forward. He didn't have a bad year, but I think it's going to be even better than what it was last year. So I like our linebacking core. Little shaky at safety, not because I don't think we have talent, but we have inexperience. If we can get through 4 or 5 games and I'm seeing that we're not giving up big plays, then I'll know the rest of the season we're not going to give up big plays. We'll know what the talent can do, and then it'll have some experience. So I'm just worried in those first few games that the lack of experience in at the safety position can hurt us. However, Marcus Floyd could sort of be experimental because he's a hybrid linebacker slash safety. I know he's going to be using the star, but we might see him back there as a single safety from time to time, or dual safeties. So I think we'll be fine with that. And Jasir Cox was also a nice addition. So we don't have any experienced true safeties, but we got some really good hybrid safeties.
Yeah, I think so too. I know. And I love the athleticism that we have at linebacker this year. I feel like that's a huge upgrade over the past few years. And then at corner, I love Daryl Porter Jr. He was honestly one of my favorite players last year. I felt like what he did as a freshman was incredible. But you brought up some good points about guys who are going to step in. All those young freshmen spells, Ben Wahad. There's another one that I'm not thinking of who was pretty highly rated as well. But it's good to have those guys in there and have them compete. At least let them compete for the job. And Wilson Lamp, who started in the spring game, they gave him a lot of reps, and he's someone who was pretty highly regarded coming out of high school as well. Actually, as a receiver, but moved him to defense. So let's see if his hands play out. I understand the Messidor kind of being a big loss, but I'm a big fan of Jefferson as well. I feel like he was underutilized last year. If you are, into PFF stats, he was actually one of our best, if not the best defensive lineman that graded out last year. And he's big. He impressed me in the spring game. He impressed me in the games that he played during the regular season. And I think his size and athleticism are a real difference maker for, it seemed like we were good against the run some games, but at the end of the year, we struggled a little bit. And I think having someone like him, if he can stay healthy, could really, really be a huge difference maker late in the season.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess the reason why I say Mesnor is going to hurt is just because he's such a good talent. It's hard not to say that's not going to hurt. But as far as what we have, though, we're going to be fine. We have excellent depth at our defensive line. One of our positions that we have the best depth at, you got Jordan Jefferson, of course, Dante Stills. We brought in Lockhart. I think that defensive line is going to be just fine. It's just Hakeem Mesdor was a great talent. I mean, it is what it is, but we're going to be fine. We will be fine. It's going to be, it once again will be a strength of our defense.
I'm shocked with how many guys we keep getting on the defensive line too. I mean, I feel like we're approaching 3 deep right now where we have quality guys, which, during the Holgerson era, I felt bad about the starters we were playing half the time. And now we have 3 guys at each position who I feel like can contribute.
Well, that's what Neal Brown has figured out. On the defense is where you need to be the most deep, because defense is what wins games. Now you need an offense to go along with it. We saw that last year. But I mean, if you look at the offense, it was just flat out bad, anemic. If we would have had an average offense last year, we would have won, 8-4, 9-3, something like that. So, his first thing whenever he came to West Virginia was to rebuild the defense. That's done. Now it's time to focus on the offense. And with the offense, depth isn't as important. Still important, but it's not as important because offense is more about getting into a groove and, getting your reps in and getting comfortable. With defense, you got to grind it out. So you need depth to give guys rest, and you need that depth to be just as good as the guys that are coming off the field. So I think we're finally figuring out the formula. Get excellent depth on defense and get some studs on offense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you make a good point about depth on defense. We're a defense these past few years who, we don't force a lot of turnovers. And so that does lead to a lot of long drives, which can wear on your defense over 4 quarters. So if you can have fresh bodies to throw out there and give guys a rest, it really helps you when it, comes late in the 4th quarter, that you don't have a bunch of gassed guys. But since we're talking about a lot of these young players, I want to get both of your thoughts, but Golden Blue Dude, I want yours first. What are your thoughts on the 2023 recruiting class so far? Because Neal Brown has been killing it when it comes to recruiting.
It's signs of some really good things coming. If you go back and look at 2019 to 2020, 21, 22, 23, the recruiting classes just keep getting better and better and better. And a lot of people, Pitt fans and Penn State fans are like, well, Gallagher, you were going to get him anyways. He's been a Western. I don't care how you want to spin it. That is a big recruit for West Virginia, a top 100 recruit as ranked by ESPN, our 5th highest ever rated recruit that we've gotten at West Virginia as far as whenever the star rankings came out, above Geno Smith. So whenever you get a recruit whose rating is higher than Geno Smith, how can you complain? Like, if you complain about that, then you need to go over to Ohio State because, West Virginia, we don't recruit top 5 classes. We just don't. We can't right now. Maybe if we can get some more donors to shell out some more money, then we can get a top 5 class. But as is, that's really stinking good. I'm excited. And, every time I see a tweet by Neal Brown that says, let's go, I'm like, son of a, he did it again, And I love that he started that too. Like, whenever Holgerson was the head coach, it wasn't even news. I mean, I know we were happy about getting Will Grier, and that was amazing. But like, whenever it actually broke, how much of a buzz was there? It's like, oh, let me look at this guy. Oh, Will Grier, he's got pretty good stats. With Neal Brown, it's like he lets you know it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really like about this staff is that they really seem to embrace the modern aspect of college football with all the social media and, even if it's just them having dinner at their house, there's always pictures, there's people smiling, looks like they're having fun. And I think the family element is really great to sell. And I think that's been a really big driving force behind what Neal Brown is selling and able to bring guys in. And, you talked about Gallagher, but another guy that really surprised me is Trotter. His dad being
he should be ranked
an
higher
all-pro middle linebacker.
That gets on my nerves.
Oh yeah, he definitely. I mean, I figured
he's a 4-star.
He's at least a 4-star. I mean, the guy has athleticism. He's a prototypical build. He's 235 already. Moves well. His brother plays for a big time college program down in Maryland. I mean, and his dad was an all-pro. So that's one thing that I didn't understand why he's still hanging around the 3-star. I mean, that's a guy that, for someone who's not a WVU alum, being able to bring in a guy with NFL bloodline is huge because those guys, they go to Ohio State, they go to Michigan, they go to Florida, they go to, Alabama, West Virginia. I mean, Neal Brown's out there stealing guys that are going to be playing in the league in a few years.
Yeah. And, we've seen him kind of get Huggins into the whole tweeting whenever he lands a recruit. And Huggins is seeing one of his best recruiting classes he's seen in a very long time, counting transfers, counting recruits. This is going to be a very talented West Virginia basketball season come 2022. So, it just shows that if you start embracing, the technology or whatever is at your disposal, maximize it. And Neal Brown, I guess he showed Bob Huggins, hey, this is what happens when you maximize. And then Bob Huggins jumped on, and now his stock has gone through the roof.
Now Bob Huggins is tweeting at Dave Portnoy to get Barstool to rename the Coliseum. That was unexpected and hilarious all at the same time.
Yeah, it was. And I'm with you guys. Neal Brown just does seem a lot more personable than Dana ever did. I wasn't a big Dana hater while he was here. I actually liked him for our head coach, but Neal Brown's just easier to root for when it comes to personality. It seems like he just knows how to connect with Mountaineer fans. And, we've been talking about how well he's done at recruiting. What do you think it is about his personality that's attracting people? Because he seems to be doing it better than anyone else before him.
He's basically taken the Dabo approach. Put it all on the line. If you're going to come here, go all in a family atmosphere, not necessarily a mom and dad, children type of thing, but everybody is together as a family. With Holgerson, I never got the sense that the team that thought that they were one big family. With Neal Brown, you can see the camaraderie and that they really do have each other's back. And when you can use that as a recruiting tool because you're going out there and you're drawing guys in and you're like, you don't have to do this alone. You're going to maximize your potential, but at the same time, when you do fall, you have guys that got your back and pick you back up and get you going down the road again. So I just think the whole Neal Brown really does remind me of Dabo when it comes to his recruiting approach, as far as the family atmosphere, the all in. I know we don't use all in, but it's basically the same mantra. You could see a lot of similarities between what Dabo does and what Neal Brown does.
I like that comparison. I think that's good. And the one thing that now that you brought it up is when you talk about the team aspect, the family aspect of Neal Brown, it was like you said, the opposite with Holgorsen. And looking back at the Holgorsen era, now that you kind of brought it to light, it's Holgorsen was all about the me and getting to the league. Like Holgorsen got guys to the league, but at the expense of a good winning football team. I mean, there was years where it felt like we probably should have won 10 or 11 games, and we were sitting at 8 wins almost pretty consistently, regardless of who was on the team.
2018, man, at minimum we should have been 10-2, if not better. That was a waste of the talent that we had.
Oh yeah, that team was so deep and so fun to watch, but the end of the season record didn't match up to how fun it was to watch that team. I mean, that's kind of tearing my heart.
When you look at the teams now, and even though we're not getting the win-loss record, we're still building on it, and I think we take a big step this year. But if you look at game to game, the effort is there. The only game that really sticks out is Texas Tech. That was awful. We did not show up in the first half, and I guarantee you he chewed their butts out, and they came out firing on all cylinders in the second half. But if you take the talent that Dana Holgorsen had towards the end of his career at West Virginia, and you put it with the teaching philosophy that Neal Brown has right now, I mean, we would be at least in the Big 12 championship, if not winning the Big 12. Think about it. We never got to a Big 12 championship under Dana Holgorsen with the talent that we had. I mean, it makes no sense when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about underachieving, thinking about Geno Smith and Tavon's last year when they won 7 games with that incredible offense. And don't get me wrong, the offense scored, but it takes an entire team to win, and that defense just seemed to blow it each and every week.
Well, in 2012, we got up to all the way number 5 after we beat Texas on the road, and then we lose 5 in a row because we go on the road to Texas Tech and fall asleep and get blasted by 4 touchdowns. And then, of course, that affected them mentally, and they were never the same till the last 2 games. It was just sheer nonsense. The whole era under Holgorsen drove me nuts. And even though some of the seasons had better records than what we're seeing under Neal Brown, at least what we're seeing now is effort. And the weird thing is, it never feels like we're out of a football game. Even when we have a 6-7 season or a 6-4 season or our first year 5-7, it never feels like we're out of a football game. Whenever Holgorsen was here, it's oh, yep, here we go again. We're having our bad game. Might as well, quit watching and go get some pepperoni rolls or whatever because we're going to get blown out on this one. It was either really, really good or really, really bad. So, I mean, that's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more invested in the Neal Brown games because, like you said, it feels like going in, you can see certain things that are happening on the field or certain things certain players are doing that give you hope. I know in all of our podcast episodes last year, it was if we can do this, we have to just make this one small change and we can win this game. And, the only game that, even going into Baylor, I think we felt okay about going into that game, even though we got absolutely slapped around in that first half. But, even the Oklahoma State game, I was like, Oklahoma State on paper is not that much better than us. You just can't turn the ball over. You can't play into their defense. And we did exactly that.
Well, it was like with Holgorsen, you could tell in the first quarter if we were going to win or not. Here's what I mean by that. If our offense was firing on all cylinders, we were either going to blow them out or it was going to be close and we're going to win. If our offense came out and it was flat, we were going to get blown out because our defense was trash. But, under Neal Brown, even when our offense isn't doing so good, the defense still gives us a chance. I mean, look at last year. People truly don't realize how bad that offense was. That was a bad, bad offense. And the defense, we won some games that we shouldn't have won. And even the games that we lost, the defense kept us in games that we shouldn't have even been, close. Look at
Oklahoma.
Minnesota. I predicted that, Minnesota was basically going to own us, and they did. Main reason was because of field position. West Virginia was on bottom of the barrel, and Minnesota was like top 10. I was like, guys, it's not going to happen. Field position, what happened? Minnesota flipped the field on us time after time after time after time because we had, our kicking game and our receiving game wasn't good, and that's how Minnesota beat us. But if you look at the final score, 18-6, so that means the defense still kept us in the game, even though our offense was terrible.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Just to switch gears a little bit, because you brought up basketball earlier, we can dive into it closer to the season opener, but just real quick, what are your thoughts on WVU's basketball team going into this year?
Our basketball team is going to have a lot of talent. It's going to the big thing that I'm worried about is cohesion because there's a lot of new faces.
Yep.
But I do think that the talent is there. And if we can get through the first, quarter of the season and avoid a just horrific start, then we have a chance to be real contenders in the Big 12 because by then you will have the talent and the experience put together as far as, being around each other. I think this is a great team. I think the potential of this particular team would be at minimum Sweet 16. That's how big of a jump I think this team can make. I think we make the big dance. I know this is a really, 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 really early prediction, but just from the roster and talent judgment and what we've done in the offseason, I think this is a Sweet 16 team with the potential to go to the Final Four if they come together as a unit. The talent is there. The athleticism is there. It's can they play together? That's my only question.
That's bold. Definitely bold. I like it, but it's bold in my mind. I know the one thing that really scares me about this team is kind of the opposite of what we had last year, where we had a go-to guy. Now we only had one of them. But this year it feels like, if we're going to win, we're going to win in, close quarters fighting where we're winning the game like 58-56 sort of thing, which is Bob Huggins style. And that's fine. But, the person that I'm wondering who that guy ends up being, and I can't think of who it is right now, unless it's one of the young guys, is, whenever you're in that 56 tie game, who's driving down and who's getting you a bucket. We've had Javon Carter be that guy. We've had Dexter Miles be that guy. We've had Miles McBride be that guy, Deshaun Butler. And those were our best teams. I don't know who's going to step up and be that guy this year. So do you have any thoughts on who's going to be the scorer on this year's WVU basketball team?
I don't right now. I'll have to look into the roster and see, who would be more capable of doing that because I'm familiar with the roster, but I'm not like it's not like a Javon Carter or a Dexter Miles type of a team where you're familiar with every single player. This one is it's a lot of players being put together, a lot of really good players. So the fact that we don't know, that's not a bad thing. I know that's a scary thing, but it's not a bad thing. All that means is they are all capable of being that go-to guy. So the fact that they're all capable of it, that's actually really good. That means it could actually be any one of them. It doesn't have to be just one. We actually have pretty good shooters this year. That's one of the things that we've been missing over the past 2 years. Bob Huggins likes to win with defense, and it's worked well. Press Virginia, which I'm hearing we're going to see a lot more of that this year. Press Virginia making a comeback possibly. But we also have shooters. Now, do we have that go-to name where we're like, pops in your head, that's going to be the guy? No, but that's okay. That just means there's like 5 or 6 names out there that could turn out to be the go-to guy. And maybe it's a different go-to guy, in different games. Maybe it's not the same guy over the season.
Yeah, the way I keep describing this team is on paper, if you took each individual player off last year's roster, we probably have a more talented team last year, but as a group, as a team, which is how you need to win in basketball, I like this team better because they all have similar playing styles, hard-nosed defense. Like you said, some of them are good shooters from the outside. I just think as a whole, this team fits Bob Huggins' coaching and personality better.
I would say the 2020-2021 team was more talented than this year. But I think this year's is more talented than last year's.
Yeah, as a whole, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're as good as, Deuce McBride and, Culver. Those were very, very talented guys. But I'm with you. I just think as a group where this is a better team. But you bring up good points. I mean, it's hard to have everyone on the same page when everyone's getting used to playing with each other. Just look at Malik Curry last year. He was a stud by the end of the season, but it took him a while to get going and get comfortable. Now we're going to have a whole team like that. And that's a little concerning because we could be, so far in the hole halfway into the year that we don't even have a chance making the tournament if they don't figure it out quick,
Yeah, and then we have guys that have transferred out and figured out it's actually not greener on the other side, and they transferred back in. Emmitt Matthews Jr. Thinking about you, bud.
I'm excited that he's coming back. I think he fills, not exactly what we needed for that final roster spot, but he does fit a lot of the stuff that we were looking for. He's a stretch winger. He can be a good scorer. Obviously, he needs to be more consistent than he was when he was here previously at putting up points. But I'm pretty excited that we got him back.
Here's the thing with Emmitt Matthews Jr. He had a couple of bad games, and then the fans piled on top of him. It got in his head. He wasn't mentally tough. So this is what I would say. I would actually not really warn the West Virginia fans, but more like just give some advice. If he does have a bad game or a couple bad games in a row, don't pile on top of this guy. We know he's talented. We know he's capable of taking over games. He really is. He could actually be that go-to guy or develop into that go-to guy. We remember the bad, and we remember him transferring out. But before all that happened, Emmitt Matthews Jr. was a freaking scoring stud.
Yeah, he was definitely a big-time guy coming out of high school. And, I think his leadership ability, his familiarity with the college, and just his size is really going to make a big difference this year because, if not for him, we're playing a whole bunch of 6'2", 6'3" guys, 1 through 3, which hurt us last year. But, I mean, I am excited for Emmitt. I love him as a player. I do think the fans kind of gave him the short end of the stick way too often. So I'm really excited to see how he turns out because this could be the perfect end to his college career is coming back to WVU. Getting us back to the tournament at least, and maybe leading us in scoring.
Yeah, for sure. Good story for sure.
Here's my thing, and maybe I'm being too hard, but I mean, me and Brandon always say, take it easy on these guys. They're just kids. This isn't everything. They're sports games. People are gonna have off days. But do other fan bases, are they just like the nicest people ever when someone has a bad game? Because I understand West Virginia, like Twitter and other social media accounts can be pretty harsh and toxic sometimes. Trust me and Brandon get it from being, associated with Brad and the voice of Motown sometimes. But I don't understand why they think they can just go to another school and then everyone's going to be super nice to them when they have a bad game.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. If you're leaving because of criticism and you keep making the same mistakes, you're still going to get criticized. People are people.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
I agree.
So, sorry, go ahead, bud.
Well, I was going to say, that was great on basketball. But, one thing that we were thinking, just to kind of close out part of the sports segment is, what is your favorite WVU sports moment?
Oh, crap. You know what? I was actually watching it earlier on my phone because I think I've Googled it so many times that now it's getting suggested, and it's 1993 Robert Walker with the touchdown run to put West Virginia up over Miami 17-14. And the reason why that's my favorite is because, I became a fan in '88, and that's when I started watching it, and I started watching it more and more, and I literally watched that team grow up and come together, and it was just, yes, '88 was special, but to me, '93 was even more special because I was seeing these guys that I had known for 3 or 4 years run through a schedule, go undefeated, and then we get the short end of the stick by getting sent to the Sugar Bowl against Florida. And I know I'm kind of trailing off here, but a lot of people wonder why we got blown out against Florida. If you go back and look at the interviews that Don Nehlen had after we beat Miami, or not Miami, Boston College, he said, if they don't put West Virginia in the national championship, you're going to have to break me out of jail, because West Virginia should have gone. We were undefeated, but they ended up putting Florida State in over us, and that killed us mentally. We were not in that Sugar Bowl game ever mentally, and that's why we got blasted. And people were like, well, that's why West Virginia, shouldn't have went to the national championship. I mean, you got blasted by Florida. Imagine what would happen in the national. Two different situations. We were expecting to go to the national championship, and we got sent to the Sugar Bowl. That's when we got blown out. But my favorite moment is Robert Walker with the touchdown run.
Yeah, it's definitely an awesome one. I believe that's the one that still holds the record for the biggest attendance at Mountaineer Field, or Milan Puskar Stadium, as they call it now. I still call it Mountaineer Field all the time, though.
Oh yeah.
I have a memory that's very similar to yours because I'm younger than you, so I don't remember watching that game live. I've only seen the highlights. But in 2005, that triple overtime against Louisville, I was at that game, and just like you said, it was like seeing the start of an era. That was really what kicked off the Pat White and Steve Slayton era, and then they went on to only lose one game that year. So I get it. I get it because that game had very similar feels.
I think my favorite would have to be the Sean Butler WVU Mountaineers when we upset Kentucky to go to the Final Four.
I was at an Applebee's where it was supposed to be only like 50 people, and we had like 200 people in the Applebee's. I remember that. That actually, now that you reminded me, that actually might be my favorite moment just because of who I was with.
It was, just going into that game, looking at how stacked that Kentucky team was. They were loaded, completely loaded, and we went out there and the defense was tenacious and the shooting was great. We got contributions from everyone, and I don't know, it just felt great. It felt like WVU finally made it. Obviously, with Deshaun blowing out his knee the next game at Duke, that was awful. But just that moment there, I felt like WVU basketball had reached its pinnacle, at least since Jerry West was on the court.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
People were crying in the Applebee's. It was amazing.
It was incredible. I love that game so much.
Yeah, that was an awesome year. But on a similar note, what's the coolest or fondest memory you have as a West Virginia content creator? Like, what's the memory that sticks out the most after doing this for a few years?
Well, there's actually a couple. One was whenever I went to the Virginia Tech game last year, and I live streamed Singing Country Roads. Of course, it got demonetized because copyright claim. I don't care. That's fine. But live streaming Singing Country Roads after we beat Virginia Tech 4th and goal stand, that one sticks out pretty good. And then there was another one where there's this, I don't know if y'all are even aware of this. There's this event that Uncle Lou and Pigskin Pete, they're big time YouTube creators, they created this event, and it's every March, and it's called the Slob Olympics. And we have 15, 20 events, see who's the best at wiffle ball, see who's the best at 40-yard dash, see who's the best at throwing frisbees, nothing crazy, but it's fun competition, right? So another fond memory is going to those Slob Olympics and meeting all the other YouTubers that I've watched on YouTube, and I've seen them in person, and getting to hang out with Uncle Lou, even though it was the week that we lost to Texas Tech. That sucked. But getting to hang out with him because, I've watched him so long. And actually, it's funny that I brought that up. This was everybody watching. This was not rehearsed. This just happened. Okay, so this past Slav Olympics.
You got a plaque. Were you the winner of the Slav Olympics?
I actually won.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's awesome.
And the cool thing was the first year, now I haven't gotten engraved yet, but it's going to go right here. The first year we had like, I don't know, 14, 15 contestants. And so they did the odds this year, and I was picked to finish 16th this year out of 24, and I ended up winning. So
That's amazing.
I've had some epic moments already in my short time as a YouTuber.
That's awesome. Congratulations, man. That sounds like a blast too.
Oh,
yeah,
man,
that's fun. And you know, what's awesome about that is you guys probably bounce ideas off each other and, you know, just get better at what you're doing, like we were talking about earlier. So that just sounds like a blast, man.
Yeah, the best part wasn't winning the trophy. The best part is just hanging out with all the people that you watch on YouTube. That was the best part.
No, I bet.
That's awesome, man.
And you know, we wanted to learn a little bit from you since, you know, you're kind of the veteran at this compared to our experience. So we were talking about social media earlier. How has your experience been with fans on social media since you started?
Oh man. They're unpredictable, man. One minute you make the best video I've ever seen in my entire, and then the next, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's trash. I mean, look, he's a fan from West Virginia. He's an inbred, you know, meth head, crackhead, whatever. I've heard every stereotype in the book. So I like it because you don't know what you're going to get from one video to the next as far as fan reaction. The moment it became fun whenever I stopped caring that people liked me. The moment I stopped caring if people liked me or not, that's when I started having fun. And that's when my channel started growing. And I'm not saying that like looking down on fans. Of course, you still want people to like your content, but you don't produce it in a way you're like, well, I don't know if they'd like me saying that or not. I don't know if I should do a bit. No, be yourself. And if it entertains you, chances are it's going to entertain others. So that's kind of how I evolved. I started off, you know, if you go look at my earlier videos, they're train wreck. I mean, I barely talked and you couldn't hear me, and I was shy and all this other stuff, and I was worried about what people thought of me. Once I stopped worrying about that, that's when the fun began.
I think that's where we're at too, because like we said earlier, you know, we get criticized just for being associated with the voice of Motown sometimes. Yep. And after a while, me and Brandon just started, you know, saying, yeah, you know, we're just going to keep doing what we do. If people like it, great. If they don't, who cares?
Exactly right. Hey, that's one thing though. Like any publicity is good publicity. Even if they're talking bad, hey, they're saying your name. That's what's important.
True. That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Definitely.
So on that note, you know, why do you think Brad and the voice of Motown gets criticized as much as they do from the fans?
It's because he doesn't pat them on the back all the time. He doesn't say, you know, all the sugar and rainbows and unicorns, all the nice stuff. Sometimes if he sees something wrong, he just, and I even disagree with him sometimes. I'm like, man, come on, that was a bad take. But you know what? It doesn't matter. If that's what he thinks, then that's what he thinks. If he feels like he needs to call somebody out, it's not my authority or anything to call him out and say, you shouldn't do something like that. That's wrong. No, that's like, we watch. If he wants to make that video, then that's his prerogative.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. You know, we love working with Brad. He's very kind to us, and you know, I couldn't agree more, though. It's not like I agree with every article he writes, but who wants to be around a person you agree with 100% of the time? It's good. It's good to debate and, you know, have conflicting thoughts. So I'm with you, man. I mean, I just don't understand the criticism.
Well, and I think the problem is they think because you're associated with him and you carry the name Voice of Motown, then that means you agree with everything he does. You can disagree with somebody and not like blatantly criticize them about it. You know what I'm saying? Like you can be like, well, now hold on. I think this, but still not like totally trash. Like I'll say something and people will be like, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. I'm like, so you're saying you disagree with me, right?
Well, that's like like Tyler said earlier, that's kind of the reason why we started the podcast was, we would get in heated debates about things that, whether it's WVU football or any other sport, basically, and just talk about it. And it would go on for hours and hours and hours. And, and it all starts just from a disagreement. And that's the great thing about, creating content for whether it's a podcast or YouTube or whatever, you're putting something out there for someone to spark a debate. I think it's the people who go out there and, like you said, call you an idiot and just dismiss everything are the ones who just aren't participating in the game and having fun. I mean, if you see a take you don't like, have fun.
Yeah.
Get involved.
That's the one thing I like about Brad is he actually likes the heat. I actually had him on one of my live shows a couple of months ago or several months ago. I was like, dude, I'm bringing the heat, man. Just let you know. He's like, man, turn it up as far as it'll go and break off the knob. I'm like, all right, man. It's coming. And it was a really good show. And when it comes to sports and debating like that, people have got to learn to stop taking things personal. Like that is so immature. It's so childish. It's ridiculous. Just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean you have to, attack them personally. It's ridiculous. You can attack their comment. You can disagree with the comment. You can debate the comment. You can argue the comment, whatever. But when people start getting personal about stuff, I'm like, we're not even talking about what I made a video on anymore. Now you're just attacking me as a person. I have no time for that.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
I'm with you. And honestly, that might be one of his best qualities is that he doesn't let anything get to him. He almost thrives off of it.
Yeah, he wants to test his limits. I think he's like, man, turn the heat even higher, man. Let's see if I cook this time.
Oh yeah, I love it. And so the last question we had for you is, we kind of were talking about it earlier, but this is our first season football and basketball to talk about. Since we became podcasters. So what's your strategy for creating quality content during, the kind of lull months of football and basketball?
It's crazy because whenever I mentioned, I became a fan in '88, which is a true story. And that was the first season that I was invested in West Virginia. And that was the first year that I started thinking about what ifs in sports. Well, what if it wasn't like that? What if they could do that? What if the rules were like this or that? So since a very young age, I have a very inquisitive mind, I guess is what you could say. So in the off season, I don't worry about, stats and news. Now, if breaking news happens, of course, I'm going to try to beat everybody to it. In fact, last year, Oklahoma and Texas go to the SEC. I just so happened to come across the Houston Chronicles, who was the first newspaper to put that out. I was like, I beat everybody, and I had over 10,000 views within 3 hours. So, whenever a big story comes out, of course you want to beat everybody to it, but there's not a big story every day. So I like to think outside the box and, think of things that maybe other people aren't talking about. I've talked about West Virginia to the ACC for 10 months. And the crazy thing is I've probably done about 7 or 8 videos on that subject, just in a different way. You can do multiple videos on the same exact subject, just with a different twist from a different angle. So it's all about making the subject interesting. It's not about finding the subject. It's about making the subject interesting, because all you have to do is go on to ESPN.com. There's 30 stories right there. It's all in how you approach it and if you can make it interesting from your angle.
Have you done what if Rich Rod hadn't thrown the 2007 Pitt game yet?
No, but now I'm thinking about it.
There you go. That one's for free. Next one, got to pay me.
I got you. No, man, that's that would have changed college football history, not just West Virginia history.
Yeah, that's the one. That was my freshman year in college at WVU. We went to the game, and man, awful. So we went back to. I lived in Towers at the time. We went back and weren't old enough to go to a bar, so ordered a whole bunch of pizza. and we each ate a box of pizza.
I wasn't at that game, but even watching it on TV, not only watching the quietness in the stadium, but the quietness, because there was like 20 of us watching the game, the quietness in something didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel real. It felt like a nightmare, a bad dream or something. I was like, man, this is, when you get in those awkward silences, or, maybe early in your dating and you didn't know what to talk about. It was like one of those moments where you're like, what do we do next? Should I talk? Should I let them talk first? Should I stand up? Should I breathe? What should I do next? It was very strange.
It's funny you bring that up, because that's exactly what I was gonna say. The oddest part, and the first thing I think of when I think of that game is after the game, because I was there too. The silence of just walking back to the car with your head down. Like, I've never heard Morgantown that quiet. No one even knew what to say to each other.
Yeah. It was so like, weird. Not what people expect. It wasn't like anger and throwing things and cussing or even crying. It was just stillness, quiet, like just total. Your emotions you didn't have any emotions for like 3 days after that game. Like, your emotions were sucked out of you.
I'm waiting for a plaintiff firm to pick up a lawsuit for emotional damage against Rich Rod for that game.
Let me know. I'll jump on that class act.
Instead of messing with Thelioma commercials, we'll have a 2007 WVU Pitt commercial.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, it really did.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is a sad note to end the podcast on. But you got anything else, Brandon?
No, that was it.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, we've been going for a while, but Golden Blue Dude, I can't thank you enough. This was fun, and I would love to run it back in a few months, especially as football approaches, and just chat more.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad you said what you said as far as it was fun. That's if you do an interview with me, or if you watch a video and your reaction was, hey, that was fun, then I'm like, I did it again. Yes. Nice. I'm not looking for, oh, he's right, or what an idiot. I'm looking for, hey, that was entertaining, because as a YouTuber, my job is to entertain and to take you away from your stresses of life, even if it's just for a couple minutes. That's my job.
Yeah, 100%. Is YouTube the best place to find you for everyone listening?
Yes, it is. That's where I pump out the videos for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, so guys, just look for Gold and Blue Dude on YouTube. If you don't already, I'm sure a lot of you already do. And that's about it for me. Got anything to add, Brandon?
Yeah, for anyone who's listening on Golden Blue Dude's channel right now, make sure you give us a follow on whatever podcast platform you listen on. If you don't listen to podcasts, now's a good time to start, because we have a lot of great content on there for you to listen to, especially during the slow off season.
Yeah, we don't really jump on the YouTube for our content. We probably should, but mainly Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just about any other platform. If you guys are looking for us, just look for the Voice of Motown podcast.
And thanks again, Go Blue Dude. This was great. Again, tons of fun, and look forward to the next time we jump on one of these together.
Oh, absolutely, guys. Just hit me an email or message me, man. I'll be glad to come on. I had fun too. This is a fun show.
For sure. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Later.
Thanks, everyone.